Welcome to FromRome.info. My name is Brother Alexis Spagnola, and I'm the publisher and editor of FromRome.info, an electronic journal for news commentary about the Vatican, the Catholic Church, and Rome and Italy. Many will want to know my opinion about Cardinal Prevost and what happened yesterday in the conclave in the Sistine Chapel at the Vatican. And so I'm going to make this public declaration. The election of Cardinal Prevost, Robert Prevost, as Leo XIV is juridically invalid. He is not the Pope. He cannot be made the Pope. This is in virtue of Pope Paul IV's papal bull, cum ex apostolatus officio, which has never been abrogated, and in one particular point has not been abrogated. So first, a point of law, church law. When a pope issues a bull and establishes a law, that remains valid until another pope abolishes it. However, if another pope passes a law about the same circumstances and doesn't abolish the law of his predecessor, then the law of his predecessor may be in certain points replaced or not. Abrogated means replaced. The bull of Pope Paul IV, cum ex apostolatus officio, I published a 2-article study of it in 2015. And it's quite clear that it has never been abrogated. It's even cited in the commentaries on the Code of Canon Law to our day as a source of the law, which in the sense is what our present laws are based on in the Catholic Church. However, there is one section of that bull that has never been put into the Code of Canon Law in the last 2 codes, because there was no Code of Canon Law before 1917, and John Paul II published one in 1983. And it is number 6 of that bull, which says, if any cardinal be elevated before his elevation to the office of Roman Pontiff, will have been found to have professed any heresy or spoken contrary to the Catholic faith in any manner, his election is null and void and cannot be made valid no matter what clothing he wears, how many cardinals agree that he's the Pope, or how many bishops or lay people or governments agree he's Pope. This is the papal law of Paul VI. It's a very unique law because it deals with a very specific case which has never happened in the history of the College of Cardinals, the Catholic cardinals, electing a man who is a heretic, a pertinacious, a formal manifest heretic. Now, most Catholics already know that if you're a heretic, you're not a member of the Catholic Church. But in church law, the church deals very precisely with this and makes many distinctions. The first distinction of a heretic is whether he's committed the sin or not, and the second is whether he's committed the crime or not. Those have to do with the act of heresy. And there's different ways to judge them. For example, if a person commits an act of heresy in his own mind and never reveals it, when he goes to his confessor to ask for absolution and explains it, that is a sin of heresy, and it's not manifest heresy because he never manifested it. Telling your confessor, he's obviously manifesting it, but he's not proclaiming it in the public. The crime consists, in canon law, of publicly affirming a heretical position. And while each of us Catholics, if we have a well-formed faith and know our Catholic religion, have the ability, if we have good reason, discernment, and information, to say this or that man has professed heresy or holds a heretical position. And that's just the exercise of our opinion. That doesn't give us rights, but it does give us an obligation, because once we recognize someone's a heretic, we must denounce him as a heretic. There was a pope in the 17th century or 18th century who said, if you don't denounce a heretic within 30 days, you yourself are guilty of cooperating in his evil. And because I accept all the decisions of the popes, I accept the morality of the Catholic Church the way it's always been, I fear that pope who made that declaration. So I'm making a declaration immediately within 12 hours of yesterday's election. So the papal law does something different, because the normal procedure is you would denounce someone as a heretic to his bishop or to the Pope, and the church would begin an official investigation and make a judgment. Speak with the person 3 times and find out if he actually holds this error, look at the books he wrote, listen to the videos and other public statements he made, call him into a private meeting and reason with him and point out what is the teaching of the church and how you can't say these things. That's how you deal with the crime of heresy in the present canonical system. The bishop or the pope or the Holy Office of the Congregation of the Doctrine of Faith would warn the individual 3 times and gives him a chance to change his mind. And that's how you determine someone is a pertinacious heretic. Because Canon 1365-4, which says, if you are a heretic, you are ipso facto excommunicated, has to do with the crime of heresy. And to commit the crime of heresy, it must be public. What you say has to be not just your opinion, but something you know is contrary to the faith, but you still assert it or support it. And it must be an act witnessed by individuals. And if you are corrected 3 times but don't accept correction, then you become pertinacious. In canon law, you're called pertinacious. And then the church authority condemns you and you become a public heretic. Because in canon law, private and public doesn't mean what it means in civil law. In civil law, private means what I do in my house. No one knows, and public is what I do in the public streets, for example. But in church law, private is what you do by your own authority, and public is what has been decided by church authority. So a public heretic is someone who the church has condemned for heresy, and that person is no longer a member of the church in the canonical sense. But before a public judgment, though we have the ability to discern someone's a heretic and separate ourselves from him out of the danger he is to ourselves or to our family or to the community, the church not having yet made a decision, we can't assert that our opinion is the decision of the church. And this is a common error of Catholics today. It's called private judgment. But in the bull of Paul IV, Cum ex Apostolatus Officio, he grants all Catholics a really extensive right, which regards a particular circumstance, and that is the election of a heretic as the Pope. He only has to be a manifest formal heretic. He doesn't have to be a condemned public heretic. Okay, so that means everyone, in virtue of that papal bull, has the right to say of a man who is a heretic, morally speaking, he's committed the crime, but he's not even been judged yet, to not hold the office that he holds. And in number 6, Paul VI states that the Church of Christ needs to be protected from the worst possible tragedy that could come to pass, and that would be if a formal manifest heretic, someone who's in the presence of other people manifested the heresy, would ever be elected the Roman pontiff. And in that bull, Paul IV declares the election null, void, and not ever able to be repaired. So that means if after the election of a heretic and he renounces his previous heresy, that doesn't count. His election is still null and void. Now, people ask my opinion. I'm a Roman Catholic. I have Italian and American citizenship, and I reside at the Church of Rome. So I have the right, as a Roman Catholic, to make the following declaration: that Cardinal Prevost was not elected the Roman pontiff. He is not the bishop of our church. He is a formal manifest heretic who, in accord with the right granted to us and the duty imposed upon us, Catholics at Rome, by the bull of Paul IV, cum ex apostolatus officio, that his election is invalid, and that no one has the duty or the right to recognize him as the Pope. He is therefore an anti-Pope, Leo XIV, and he can never become a true Pope unless he renounces his heresy and he's re-elected by the College of Cardinals. Now, from what we saw with the debacle with Pope Benedict's non-abdication, the College of Cardinals has shown that they have no intention of ever finding fault with themselves. The College of Cardinals has the ministerial duty to elect the Roman pontiff. But if they don't do it, the faithful of Rome have the right to do it. Because when St. Peter died, he gave the right to the faithful of Rome. He didn't give it to the College of Cardinals. It only pertains to the College of Cardinals to elect the Pope in accordance with papal law, beginning with Nicholas II in Nomine Domini in 1059 AD, and subsequently modified by many popes, the last of which was Benedict XVI, who with his Normus Non Nullis modified the papal law Universi Dominici Gregis of John Paul II. And current papal legislation on the election of popes only deals with the conclave. Although, I think it's the 6th paragraph of John Paul II's introduction to his papal law Universi Dominici Gregis, he says a conclave is not essential for the election of a valid election of a Roman pontiff. And that's because, obviously, for the first 1,000 years, there was no College of Cardinals, there was no conclave. Conclaves begin in 1274 at Viterbo. And so the law is only for that particular circumstance. So the cardinals have committed a sacrilege. They have used their authority under the law to elect someone who is not eligible for the office. Because to be eligible for office, you have to be a Catholic, a celibate, and profess the Catholic faith, not be a heretic. And they're obliged also by the law of Paul IV, the bull, Paul IV. And so I want to encourage all Catholics in the world now, you have the right to a pope who's Catholic. You do not have the obligation to submit to someone who's not Catholic. You have the duty not to submit to him. You have a duty not just to resist him, but to organize so that we have a Catholic Pope at Rome. I'm not going to say all the political reasons why Cardinal Prevost stinks to high heaven, like he's endorsed by Cardinal Kupik, who's a raving homo heretic. He is the preferred candidate of Father James Martin, a Jesuit, an absolute raving homo apostle, that his election was already decided before Pope Francis died, that he's the preferred candidate of Pope Francis and is going to carry through his heretical agendas, that he's in favor of illegal immigration. You could go on and on about Cardinal Prevost. Oh, that he has protected the serial pedophile Richard McGrath, or Robert McGrath, a fellow Augustinian friar, when he was his superior in Chicago and the general superior of the whole order at Rome. That he has ignored the victims of sexual abuse in Peru, and he connived that the Diocese of Peru would pay the victims off to silence them before the conclave of this spring. When Info Vaticana confronted him on this with a dossier that they got from the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, he did not deny that he covered up the sexual abuse of a priest in Peru. But the worst thing of all, and the only reason why we would say he's a heretic, because all those other things are crimes, but they're not heresy, is that he approves of Fiducia Supplicans, making it quite clear that his position is that let the bishops decide whether to implement it or not, according to times and places and cultures. And this statement is formal, manifest heresy at two levels. First of all, he approves of the misuse of the most sacred name of the divine majesty to approve of individuals involved in perverted sexual relations. Now, the sin of sodomy is a sin which cries out to God for vengeance. God has destroyed cities because of this sin. But at Sodom and Gomorrah, they didn't commit the sin in the name of God. And their priests didn't praise them for what they're doing in the name of the true God. This is why Fiducia Supplicans, the document says that you could do that, is the most diabolic, blasphemous, and sacrilegious attack on the second commandment of the Decalogue, remember to keep holy the name of the Lord thy God, in the history of salvation, in the history of humanity, in the history of the world. So anyone who says it can be implemented is an atheist, is not even a Catholic, and is committing the most outrageous attack against the divine name, whereas a Roman pontiff's duty is to protect the divine name. If a pope doesn't do anything other than protect the divine name, he's fulfilled 90% of his duty, because that's what bishops are for. That's what the successor of St. Peter's for. Secondly, by saying that this church here could implement it and this church here is not obliged to, he is denying the divine foundation of the one true holy Catholic and apostolic church, which is called Catholic and Orthodox because in every place, at all times, in the last 2,000 years, we have believed the same thing as in every other place. We have practiced the same thing. We have never invoked the name of God to approve of perverse sexual relations, either of an individual or of a couple, whether they call themselves a couple or not. And so he's proposing an idea of the church which is like Anglican, where it's merely a human institution and you vote on doctrine wherever you are. And that's not Christianity. So it's clearly that Cardinal Prevost is a manifest and formal heretic. It seems also he is a pertinacious heretic, but I say seem because pertinacity is determined only in an ecclesiastic tribunal. And since the cardinals have elected him, they're not going to go separate them. Even Cardinal Burke just endorsed him publicly from his shrine of Our Lady of Guadalupe in Wisconsin. So at this point, we Catholics of the Diocese of Rome and the Suburban Diocese, we have to militate for an election of the Roman Pontiff that is juridically valid. That is someone who's Catholic. And we have the right now to use our apostolic right to elect the Bishop of Rome, since the cardinals have failed in their duty and will not elect someone to stand against anti-Pope Leo XIV. And so if you're outside of Rome, I would ask you to support this effort with your prayers, and we will need some financial support. But if you are a member of the Church of Rome, you need to go to chiesaromana.info and sign up and follow our activities as we try to do the near impossible to organize such an election. Thank you very much. God bless. And since this video is being uploaded to YouTube and will be in the format of closed captioning, by selecting the icon closed captioning and choosing the gear and setting it to your native language, you can see the subtitles in any language of the world. And let your friends know that who didn't hear me say it at the beginning of this video, because I didn't say it. God bless. Ave Maria.